The day the fake daughter accepted my inheritance, I stood at the back of the banquet hall and clapped with everyone else. The chandeliers above us glittered like frozen rain. Gold curtains framed the stage. 100 white lilies stood in tall crystal vases, filling the air with the heavy sweetness rich families used to make greed smell like grief. At the front of the room, beneath my grandfather's portrait, Choi Erin stood in a black dress with her hands folded neatly in front of her. She looked delicate, elegant, heartbroken. Exactly the kind of granddaughter the Hanul Foundation wanted the world to mourn with. Her eyes were red, but not swollen. Her hair was pinned back with one pearl clip. Her voice trembled just enough when she said, "I promise to protect grandfather's legacy with everything I have." The guests sighed. Some wiped tears. The reporters raised their cameras. On the giant screen behind her, the words appeared in silver. Hanul Foundation Succession Ceremony Sole Family Heir. Choi Erin. My name was not there. Not anymore. In my last life, this was where I shouted. I pushed through the crowd and screamed that Erin was not my grandfather's blood, that she had forged records, that she had stolen the identity of the missing granddaughter my family had searched for 20 years.
Me.
I was the missing granddaughter. The child who had disappeared after the accident that killed my parents. The child raised in an orphanage under the wrong name. The child who came back too late, only to find another girl sitting in my chair, wearing my mother's necklace, calling my grandfather family. No one believed me. Erin cried first. "Seoyun," she whispered into the microphone, tears sliding beautifully down her face. "I know you're hurting, but please don't do this here." By sunrise, I was called a liar. By the end of the week, Hanul Foundation's lawyers accused me of extortion. By the end of the month, Erin inherited my grandfather's estate, my mother's shares, and the foundation my family built. And by winter, after the court rejected my petition because the original DNA file had been lost, I stood alone outside the foundation building in the snow, watching Erin's face glow on the charity billboard, wondering how a person could lose her family twice and still be expected to remain dignified. Then came the crosswalk, the black car, the impact, the cold road against my cheek. Darkness. But this time, as Erin accepted the inheritance in front of donors, reporters, trustees, and relatives who had never once looked at me long enough to recognize my mother's eyes, I only clapped. Because Erin didn't know. She didn't know my grandfather had changed the estate rules 3 months before he died. She didn't know the final transfer of voting shares required a live, independently witnessed DNA confirmation. She didn't know the old test she forged had already been flagged by the court laboratory. She didn't know the foundation's new trustee had ordered duplicate samples from every claimant. And she definitely didn't know that the orphan assistant she had allowed into the family archive was not a stranger. It was me.
Han Seo-yun.
The real granddaughter. The blood heir. The girl she had replaced. Erin lifted the inheritance certificate with both hands. The crowd applauded harder. I smiled. "Enjoy it, Erin. You can hold the paper for now. The blood test already knows who it belongs to." Chapter 1. When I opened my eyes after dying, I was standing in the hallway outside my grandfather's hospital room. For several seconds, I forgot how to breathe. The corridors smelled like antiseptic, rain-soaked coats, and lilies someone had already bought too early. The lights were too white, the floor too polished. My hands were wrapped around a paper cup of vending machine coffee that had gone cold. At the end of the hallway, a nurse pushed a cart past the window. Outside, the city blurred under afternoon rain. Then a door opened. My aunt stepped out. Choi Myung-gi, my mother's older cousin. The woman who, in my last life, had looked me in the eye and said, "Even if you are blood, you arrived too late to be family." Now she was alive again, younger by months. Her black mourning dress had not yet appeared. Her pearls were still at her throat. Her face was tired but not broken. Behind her, through the half-open door, I saw the hospital bed. My grandfather lay there. Choi Jianwo, founder of Hanul Foundation. The man whose photograph had hung in the orphanage donation hall when I was a child. The man I used to thank every winter for sending blankets, never knowing I was thanking my own grandfather for charity because he had failed to find me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I looked down. September 8th. My breath stopped. September 8th. 6 weeks before my grandfather's death. 4 weeks before Aaron would be publicly confirmed as heir. 3 weeks before I would discover the fake DNA report. 2 months before the foundation succession ceremony. And 5 months before my first life ended on a frozen road with my inheritance in someone else's hands. My auntie saw me standing there. Her expression cooled. "Who are you?" In my last life, I had come to the hospital as a volunteer assistant for the Foundation Archive project. I had only just begun suspecting the truth then. This time, I remembered everything. But memory without proof was just madness, wearing confidence. I bowed politely.
Han Seoyun.
I'm from the archive team. Her eyes moved over my plain coat, cheap shoes, and wet hair.
Dismissed.
Family only beyond this point. Family. The word hit like a slap. Behind her, another voice came softly. "Auntie, is grandfather awake?" Choi Erin appeared at the door. She wore a cream cardigan and carried a thermos with both hands. Her hair fell over her shoulders in soft waves. Her eyes were wide and gentle, the eyes of a girl trained to look fragile in expensive rooms. In my last life, I had thought she was kind. She brought tea to nurses. She knew the names of junior staff. She called me Seoyun Uni the first week we met, as if affection cost her nothing. Later, I learned affection was exactly how she entered locked rooms. Erin looked at me. For 1 second, her smile paused. Did she recognize me?
No.
Not yet. But something in my face bothered her. It had always bothered her. My mother's eyes, perhaps. My grandfather's jawline. The family resemblance she had to imitate with makeup and lighting. "Hello," she said gently. "You're from the archive team?" "Yes." Her smile warmed. "Thank you for helping with grandfather's legacy project." Legacy. She said it like she had already swallowed the word. Myungi touched Erin's arm. "Don't talk to staff too much. You're exhausted." Staff. I lowered my eyes. Not in shame. In calculation. In my last life, I burst into rooms too early, carrying truth without armor. This time, I would remain staff. Staff could enter archives. Staff could skin documents. Staff could be ignored. And ignored women hear everything. Chapter 2. The Hanul Foundation Archive was located in the old west wing of the family estate. The estate itself sat on a hill above the river, surrounded by pine trees, stone walls, and the kind of silence money buys from the city. My mother had grown up there. I knew that only from photographs. Choi Yuan. Her face appeared in old newspapers beside my grandfather's, smiling at charity galas, hospital openings, and scholarship ceremonies. I had her eyes. Everyone had said so in my last life. Too late. Only after the scandal. Only after it became safer to whisper than speak. The archive rooms smelled like dust, leather, and old grief. Boxes of photographs lined the shelves. Donation records. Legal filings. Family letters. Press clippings. My mother's school awards. My parents' wedding album. The first time I saw that album in my last life, I cried so hard I had to hide between storage cabinets. This time, I opened it with dry eyes. Not because it hurt less. Because I had work to do. My parents stood beneath cherry blossoms in the first photograph. My father, Han Jisoo, looked nervous. My mother laughed at something off camera. Her hand rested over her stomach.
Me.
I touched the image gently. "I came back," I whispered. No answer. Of course. The dead do not answer. They leave documents. I began searching. The accident report. The missing child file. Police notices. Private investigator invoices. Hospital records from the night my parents died. And finally, the first strange thing. A note from my grandfather's lawyer, dated 3 months before his hospitalization. Chairman Choi requests amendment to succession protocol. Final estate transfer must be conditional upon independently verified biological kinship test from 2 accredited laboratories, performed after the claimant reaches legal majority or upon succession event, whichever is later. My hands went still. In my last life, I had never seen this file. Because by the time I entered the archive as a claimant, Aaron's lawyers had removed half the boxes. This time, the file sat quietly in folder C-17, waiting. I scanned it, saved it, copied it twice. Then I searched for Aaron's DNA record. It should have been easy. Her entire identity rested on the claim that she was Choi Yoan's missing daughter, found abroad after years of confusion. But the file was thin.
Too thin.
One DNA report from a private clinic. No raw data. No chain of custody.
No witness signatures. No second lab.
No sample collection record. In my last life, I had shouted that the report was fake. This time, I read it like a professional. Then I smiled. Not because it was convincing, because it was lazy. Aaron had not expected anyone to look closely. Why would they? She had arrived beautiful, grieving, and perfectly timed when my grandfather was already desperate to believe. People do not examine miracles while crying. My phone buzzed. A message from Aaron. Aaron. Sioyan Uni, are you still in the archive? Aaron. Please don't work too late. Grandfather would hate people exhausting themselves for him. I stared at the screen. Uni. She was already testing the shape of affection. I typed back. Me. Thank you. I'll finish soon. Then I opened a new folder. True Succession Evidence, Han Sioyun. Chapter 3. Aaron began inviting me to tea after that. Not because she liked me, because she noticed my silence. In the family estate, silence had value. It meant you heard things, and might one day repeat them. Better to turn silence into loyalty early. She chose the small sunroom, overlooking the winter garden. The same room where my mother had once painted watercolors as a teenager, according to a caption I found behind an old frame. Aaron sat at the table with lemon tea, almond biscuits, and a smile soft enough to fool people who wanted kindness, served in porcelain cups. You must think our family is strange, she said. I looked down at my tea. Every family is strange from the inside. Her smile flickered. What a poetic answer. In my last life, I would have laughed nervously. This time, I let the silence stretch. Aaron tilted her head. You remind me of someone. My fingers tightened around the cup.
Doi.
She studied my face. Maybe a portrait in the hall. There it was. The danger. Not enough recognition. Just discomfort. I smiled politely. I have a common face.
No.
Her eyes sharpened briefly. Not common. Then she laughed softly.
Saudi.
That sounded odd. Before I could answer, Mayangi entered the sunroom. She stopped when she saw us. Aaron, why are you sitting with staff? Aaron lowered her eyes. I was lonely. 2 words. Immediate victory. Mayangi's face softened. My poor girl.
Poor girl.
The heiress with my mother's necklace. The fake granddaughter sitting in my family sunroom.
Poor girl.
Mayangi turned to me. You may go. I stood. Aaron reached for my hand. Uni, please don't misunderstand. Auntie is just protective. I looked at her hands. Her fingers were delicate.
Warm.
In my last life, those fingers had clutched a microphone while she called me unstable. I understand, I said. As I left, I heard Mayangi whisper behind me. You are too trusting. That girl looks at you strangely. Aaron answered softly. I know, but I feel sorry for her. Of course. Pity is a velvet leash. Chapter 4. My grandfather woke clearly on September 17th. Only for 20 minutes. Long enough to change everything. The head nurse found me in the archive. Chairman Choi is asking for the yuan box. My heart stopped. The yuan box?
Yes.
Family photos, I think. Miss Aaron is with him.
Of course she was.
I carry the box myself. Nobody stopped me. Staff with boxes are invisible even when carrying fate. Inside the hospital room, my grandfather sat propped against pillows. His face was thin, skin pale, eyes still sharp enough to make the room straighten around him. Aaron sat beside him, holding his hand. Grandfather, she said gently. The archive assistant brought Mother's photographs. Mother. My stomach turned. My grandfather looked at me. For 1 second, his expression changed. Not recognition.
Pain.
Perhaps I looked like a ghost he had loved. Come closer, he said. Myangi frowned. Father, she staff. Come closer, he repeated. I stepped forward. His eyes searched my face. What is your name? My throat tightened. In my last life, I shouted it too late. This time, I said calmly, Han Seoyeon. His fingers twitched.
Han.
My orphanage assigned it. Aaron's hand tightened around his. Only slightly. My grandfather noticed nothing. Or perhaps he noticed everything and was too tired to show it. Open the box, he said. I did. Photographs lay inside. My mother at 10, missing 2 front teeth. At 16, holding a debate trophy. At 24, pregnant and glowing. My grandfather reached shakily toward one photograph. His eyes filled. My Yuan. The room went quiet. Erin lowered her head, performing grief for a mother she had never known. My grandfather looked at her,
Then at me.
then back to the photograph. Her eyes, he whispered. My heart stopped. Myangi quickly said, Yes, Erin resembles her around the eyes. My grandfather did not answer. His gaze remained on me. Erin looked up slowly. For the first time, I saw fear in her face. Small.
Instant. Real.
Then my grandfather closed his eyes. The moment passed. The nurse adjusted his blanket. Myangi told me to leave. I bowed and carried the box back to the archive. But inside the lid, where my hand had rested, I found a folded note that had not been there before. Old paper. My grandfather's handwriting. Shaky but readable. If this box leaves my room with the archive assistant, Attorney CO is to confirm chain protocol immediately. Do not rely on old tests. Yuan's child may not be where we were told. My knees nearly gave out. He had suspected. Before death. Before the ceremony. Before I screamed in my last life. He had suspected. I pressed the note to my chest and stood alone among boxes of my stolen childhood, breathing like someone pulled from water. Then I scanned it. Because love matters. But evidence survives. Chapter 5 Attorney CO arrived 2 days later. Not publicly. He came to the archive pretending to review estate documents. He was an older man with silver hair, tired eyes, and the careful posture of someone who had spent his life watching rich families pretend greed was tradition. He closed the archive door. You are Han Seoyeon? Yes. He placed my grandfather's note on the table. Where did you find this? In the Yuan box after I delivered it to Chairman Choi. He studied me. In my last life, Attorney CO had been the first adult to look guilty after I was destroyed. Not helpful.
Guilty.
There is a difference. This time, guilt had arrived early enough to be useful. He opened a leather folder. Chairman Choi amended succession protocol. I assume you found that. Yes. And Miss Choi Aaron's DNA file? Yes. What did you notice? No chain of custody. One private clinic. No raw data.
No second lab.
No witnessed collection. Attorney CO looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. You speak like someone who has already lost a case. My hands curled into fists.
I have.
He did not ask what I meant. Smart man. Instead, he slid a form toward me. Then let us make sure you do not lose this one. It was a kinship verification consent form. My name was blank. You suspect I'm Yuan's daughter? I said. I suspect Chairman Choi suspected it. And you? He looked at my face. His eyes softened despite himself. I was at your mother's wedding. You have her eyes. The words hit harder than I expected. People said that too late in my last life. Here, in the dusty archive, before public ruin, they felt almost dangerous. Hope is a sharp thing when you have died from disappointment. I signed the form. Attorney CO sealed it. 2 labs, he said. Independent collection. No family access. No announcement until we have final results. And Erin? She will also be required to provide a fresh sample before succession transfer. Does she know? Only that protocol requires updated verification. I almost smiled. She'll try to avoid it. I expect so. She'll try to make me look suspicious. I also expect so. I looked at him. Then why keep me as archive staff? His expression sharpened.
Good.
He respected the question. Because if we remove you now, she will know where the threat is. And if she finds out anyway, then we proceed faster. I nodded. Attorney Seo gathered the papers. At the door, he paused.
Miss Hen.
Yes? If you are Yuan's daughter, I am sorry. My throat closed. For what? For being late. I thought of the orphanage winter blankets, the charity photos, my grandfather searching the world while I grew up under his foundation's logo. Late was too small a word. Be useful, I said. His face tightened. Then he bowed. I will. Chapter 6. Aaron began to unravel when the fresh DNA request arrived. Not publicly. Publicly, she smiled. Privately, she became sharper. She stopped calling me Uni. She asked why I spent so much time in the archive. She told Myangi that I made her uncomfortable. She told staff I had strange energy. Rich girls love vague accusations. They leave no fingerprints. One afternoon, she found me scanning hospital donation records. The archive was quiet except for the soft buzz of the machine. She closed the door behind her. Seoyun. I looked up. Miss Choi. Her smile disappeared. Not slowly. All at once. You don't need to be so formal. I thought staff should know their place. Her eyes flashed. So she understood insults when returned in her own family's language. She walked closer. What are you looking for? Donation records.
Why?
It's my job. Your job is to scan what Attorney Seo assigned, not wander through family history. I placed one page into the scanner. Is family history dangerous? Her face tightened. You're very bold for someone living off our foundation's wages. Our foundation. My grandfather's foundation. My mother's foundation. My inheritance. I smiled. I'm grateful for the work. Aaron leaned over the table. You think you look like her, don't you? There it was. The truth beneath all her softness. I looked up slowly. Like who? Her lips pressed together. My mother. My mother. She said it deliberately. A knife laid flat on the table. In my last life, that phrase made me scream. This time, I corrected the paper alignment. People see what they want to see. Her fingers curled. You should be careful, Seoyun. The Choi family is kind, but they don't tolerate opportunists. Is that how you got in? The words left quietly. Too quietly. Aaron went white, then red.
For a second, I thought she might slap me.
Instead, tears filled her eyes.
Fast.
Efficient. She stepped back just as the door opened. Myangi entered. Perfect timing. Aaron whispered, I only asked what she was scanning, and her voice broke. Myangi rushed to her. What did you say to her? She snapped at me. I stood. Miss Choi asked whether family history was dangerous. Aaron's tears stopped. Only for half a second. But Attorney Seo had entered behind Myangi.
He saw.
Not the whole truth. Enough. Miss Han, he said calmly, please continue scanning the assigned records. Mrs. Choi, Miss Aaron, this archive contains estate-sensitive material. Please do not interrupt staff. Myangi stared. No one spoke to her like that. Not anymore. Aaron lowered her eyes. Yes, Attorney Seo. But as she left, she looked back at me. This time, there was no softness.
Good.
Masks are most dangerous before they crack. Chapter 7. My DNA sample was collected in a courthouse clinic. No family estate. No private doctor. No room where Aaron could switch cups and smile afterward. 2 witnesses. Photographs. Barcode swabs. Signed custody form. Attorney Seo stood outside the room when I finished. How do you feel? I almost laughed. As if my whole life is on a cotton swab. He did not smile. That is unfortunately accurate. The results took 12 days. Longest 12 days of my second life. I still worked in the archive. Still watched Aaron rehearse grief beside my grandfather's bed. Still watched Myangi praise her devotion. Still watched reporters gather outside the hospital as news of my grandfather's condition worsened. Then, on October 3rd, Attorney CO called me. Come to my office. My legs shook the entire taxi ride. His office overlooked the river. Rain moved across the windows in thin gray lines. He handed me a sealed envelope. I did not open it immediately. My hands would not obey. Attorney CO's voice softened. Would you like me to read it?
No.
I opened it. The words blurred, then sharpened. Probability of biological relationship between Han Seoyeon and Choi Jianwo as grandchild, 99.9987%. For a moment, there was no sound. No office.
No rain. No law.
Just that number. 99.9987, not charity. Not coincidence. Not delusion.
Blood.
My knees weakened. Attorney CO guided me into a chair before I fell. I pressed the paper to my chest, but carefully, not to wrinkle it. Even grief had learned document preservation. My name, I whispered. Attorney CO sat across from me. Your legal name remains Han Seoyeon until amended.
But yes.
You are Choi Yuan's daughter. My mother. My real mother. Not a portrait. Not a file.
Mine.
I covered my mouth. The sob that came out of me was ugly. Animal. Too old. Too young. Attorney CO looked away. Good man. After a while, I wiped my face. What about Aaron? His expression changed. She delayed collection twice. Today she submitted a medical exemption request. I laughed once through tears. Of course. What happens now? We compel sample collection before succession transfer. Publicly. The ceremony is already scheduled. The board wants final confirmation attached to the transfer. Chairman Choi's amended protocol requires witness confirmation. I looked at the test result. In my last life, I had tried to reveal truth in public because no private door opened. This time, the public door had been built by my grandfather himself. Let the ceremony continue, I said. Attorney CO studied me. You understand what that means? It means Aaron will stand in front of everyone. Yes. It means she may be humiliated. Yes. I looked out at the rain. In my first life, Aaron had let me be humiliated in front of everyone, then used my pain as proof against me. This was not kindness, but it was symmetry. Then let her stand, I said. Chapter 8. My grandfather died on October 11th. Quietly, at dawn, Aaron was photographed leaving the hospital in tears. Myangi nearly collapsed for the cameras. I stood in the staff corridor holding a box of archived photographs he had requested the night before. No one photographed me. That was fine. For 3 days, the funeral repeated the same cruelty I had already lived. Guests praised Aaron's devotion. Reporters called her the miracle granddaughter. Donors said my grandfather could rest knowing his bloodline had returned. I stood behind flower arrangements and listened. Bloodline. Returned. Miracle. Every word was a match held near gasoline. Aaron played her role well. Too well. She bowed to elders, comforted staff, held Myangi's hand, and stood before my grandfather's portrait with trembling lips. Once, she passed me in the hallway. No one else was near. Her voice was low. You should leave after the funeral. I looked at her.
Why?
Because you're becoming attached to a family that isn't yours. I almost smiled. Are you? She froze. Then recovered. I know what you're trying to do. Do you? You think because you look like her, people will believe you're special. She stepped closer. But resemblance is not blood. No, I said. It isn't. Her face tightened. Maybe some part of her heard the trap. Maybe not. She continued. Grandfather chose me. Everyone chose me. Even if you crawl around old boxes until your hands bleed, nothing here belongs to you. In my first life, that sentence would have shattered me. This time, it landed against a test result in Attorney CO's safe. I smiled. Then you should have no problem with the final verification. Her face went pale. There it was.
Fear. Real fear.
She whispered. What did you do? I stepped past her. Archive work. Behind me, She did not move for a long time. Chapter 9. The succession ceremony was scheduled for November 2nd. A public event. Foundation donors, trustees, reporters, family, government officials, all gathered to witness Erin formally inherit the family voting rights and chair the Hanul Foundation Trust. In my last life, it had been her coronation. This time, it was a lab room with chandeliers. Attorney Seo warned me the night before. Once this begins, there may be no private way back. For her? For you. I understood. If the DNA test came out publicly, my life would become a headline. Missing heiress. Fake granddaughter. Inheritance scandal. Orphan revealed. Every pain I had carried privately would be turned into content. In my first life, I had been dragged into public as a liar. This time, I would enter as truth. That did not make exposure gentle. I know, I said. Attorney Seo placed a folder before me. Erin's compelled sample was finally collected under court witness. And he looked tired. The preliminary result excludes her as biological grandchild. Even though I knew, hearing it made the air change. Does she know?
No.
The sealed result will be opened by the succession committee tomorrow as required by Chairman Choi's protocol. I looked down at my hands. In my first life, I had dreamed of this. Erin exposed. Erin speechless. Erin ruined before the same people who applauded her. Now that it was here, I felt something heavier than triumph. Because beneath her lies was a girl who had once been no one too. A girl brought into the family by someone who needed a replacement. A girl who learned that love arrived when she performed blood well enough. That did not forgive her, but it made the cruelty sadder. Who brought her? I asked. Attorney Seo's face darkened. We believe Myeongi. I closed my eyes. Of course. Myeongi, who feared losing influence if no heir existed. Myeongi, who controlled my grandfather's visitors. Myeongi, who found a pretty orphan girl with vague records and shaped her into a miracle. Erin had stolen my life. But someone had handed her the costume. Will Myeongi be exposed too? Yes. I nodded. Good. That part felt like triumph. Chapter 10. The banquet hall was full by noon. Everything glittered. Gold, crystal, lilies, money morning itself. Erin stood on stage beneath my grandfather's portrait. She wore black again. Red eyes, steady hands. A girl who had practiced tragedy until it became posture. I stood in the back. No longer archive staff. Not yet announced. Just a woman in a navy dress with my mother's eyes and a folder full of blood. Myeongi sat in the front row, smiling faintly through grief. Attorney Seo stood beside the succession committee. The chairman of the trustees spoke first. Today, we honor Chairman Choi Ji-in's legacy by confirming the succession of his family heir. Applause. Erin lowered her head. Then she gave her speech. She spoke about finding family after years of loss. About my grandfather's love. About destiny. About how blood was not only inheritance, but responsibility. I almost laughed at that.
Blood.
The word was brave of her. Then came the certificate. The silver screen displayed her name. Sole family heir. Choi Erin. The room clapped. I clapped too. That was where this story began. The trustee held up the succession folder. As required by Chairman Choi's amended estate protocol, final biological kinship verification must be opened and entered into record before execution of transfer. The applause faded. Erin's smile froze. Myeongi's face changed. Only slightly. Enough. Erin looked at Attorney Seo. What is this? Her microphone caught it. Attorney Seo stepped forward. A routine final requirement under Chairman Choi's signed amendment. Erin laughed softly. Of course.
Brave.
Very brave. The trustee opened the first sealed result. My result. He read silently. His face went pale. The room stirred. Attorney Seo took the document and spoke clearly. Han Seoyeon is confirmed as biological granddaughter of Chairman Choi Ji-in with probability of 99.9987%. The world stopped. Every head turned.
Toward me.
Cameras moved. Myeongi stood halfway from her chair. Aaron's lips parted. No sound came out. The trustee opened the second result. His hands visibly shook. Attorney Seo did not wait for him to recover. The compelled sample provided by Choi Aaron excludes biological relationship to Chairman Choi Jianwo. A sound moved through the hall. Not a gasp. A rupture. Reporters stood. Guests whispered. Someone dropped a glass. Aaron looked at the screen behind her, where her name still glowed like a lie too slow to disappear. Then she looked at me. For the first time in 2 lives, she had no tears ready. Chapter 11. Myangi screamed first. That surprised no one who knew her. This is impossible. Attorney Seo turned toward her. Mrs. Choi, please sit.
No.
This is a trick. That girl is staff. Staff. Even now. Even with blood on paper. I walked forward slowly. The crowd parted. Not respectfully. Instinctively. Like people making room for an accident they could not stop watching. Aaron stood frozen on the stage. The certificate trembled in her hands. I climbed the steps. The lights were hot. The cameras closer than I expected. In my first life, this stage had made me look insane. This time, I let the silence settle before speaking. My name is Han Seoyun, I said. I was raised under the wrong identity after the accident that killed Choi Yuan and Han Jiso. I submitted DNA verification through court witness chain of custody under Chairman Choi's amended succession protocol. My voice shook once. I let it. I did not come here to steal a family. I came because mine was stolen from me. Aaron flinched. Myangi shouted, lies. Attorney Seo raised another document. The committee also has evidence that Miss Aaron's original DNA report lacked valid chain of custody and was submitted through a clinic connected to Mrs. Choi's private aid. Now the room truly erupted. Myangi staggered back. The trustee whispered something to security. Aaron's eyes filled at last.
Late.
Messy.
Real.
She turned toward the audience. I didn't know, she whispered. The microphone caught it. I looked at her. That sentence might have saved a better person. But not her. Didn't you? Her face crumpled. I was told. I stepped closer. You told me nothing here belonged to me. She went white. The audience quieted.
Good.
Let them hear that too. You wore my mother's necklace, I said. You called my grandfather yours. You let lawyers call me an extortionist in another version of this story you don't remember. My voice nearly broke. I swallowed it. In this life, you had many chances to ask why your proof could not survive a real test. Tears fell down her face. I was scared. At last. A true sentence. I looked at her for a long moment. So was I. Then Attorney Seo stepped between us. The transfer is suspended. Miss Choi Aaron is excluded from biological succession. Han Soyun's legal recognition petition will proceed immediately. The screen behind us changed. Her name disappeared. For one painful second, the screen went blank. Then it displayed, succession transfer suspended pending corrected heir registration. Not my name yet. Not fully, but no longer hers. Aaron stared at the empty space where her borrowed life had been. Chapter 12. The scandal consumed the country for weeks. That was what happens when rich families bleed in public. News channels replayed the ceremony. Aaron holding the certificate. Attorney Seo reading the DNA result. Myangi screaming. Me walking to the stage. They called me the lost heiress. The orphan granddaughter. The real bloodline. I hated most of it. Not because it was false. Because it was too simple.
People wanted a fairy tale.
A stolen princess returns. The fake daughter falls. Justice smiles under chandeliers. But real justice arrived with legal petitions, identity amendments, trauma interviews, inheritance freezes, trustee audits, and reporters outside my apartment asking how it felt to win back my blood.
When?
As if blood were a prize. As if I had not spent my childhood thanking my own family foundation for winter blankets. Myangi was removed from the trust board pending investigation. Her aide confessed to arranging Aaron's original false record. The private clinic denied wrongdoing badly enough that regulators noticed. Aaron disappeared from the estate. For 3 weeks, no one saw her. Then one rainy evening she came to the archive. My archive now, though I still did not think of it that way. She stood in the doorway wearing a gray coat, no makeup, hair tied low. Without pearls, without cameras, without my mother's necklace. She looked younger. Or maybe just finally unlit. "Can I come in?" she asked. I looked at her.
No.
She nodded as if she expected that. Then she held out a small box. My mother's necklace. I should have returned it earlier. Yes. Her hand shook. I took the box carefully. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Rain tapped against the archive windows. Erin whispered, "I really did think I was her daughter at first." I looked at her. "Did you?" She nodded, tears forming. "When Annie found me, I was 16. I had no family. She said there had been a mistake, that I was lost, that I belonged somewhere beautiful." A broken laugh escaped her. I wanted to believe it so badly. That landed somewhere I did not want touched. Because I understood wanting to belong somewhere beautiful. I understood looking at a grand house and wishing blood could be a door. But later? I asked.
Her tears fell.
Later, I knew enough to be afraid. There it was. Not full innocence. Not full villainy. Human ugliness. The kind that chooses silence because truth threatens comfort. "I thought if grandfather loved me, maybe that made me real," she said. I looked down at the necklace box. Love does not change DNA.
No.
And lying does not become family, because people clap. She closed her eyes.
No.
I waited. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry. Be specific." She flinched, then nodded. "I'm sorry I wore your mother's things. I'm sorry I called him grandfather after I knew there were doubts. I'm sorry I let you look like a liar. I'm sorry I told you nothing belonged to you when I was the one holding stolen things." The words were quiet.
Ugly.
Needed. I opened the box. The necklace lay inside, a small gold pendant shaped like a plum blossom. My mother's favorite flower, according to her letters. I closed it. "I believe you're sorry now." Erin looked up. Hope flickered. Fragile. Dangerous. "I did not feed it. But I don't forgive you." Her face crumpled. She nodded. "I know. Maybe she did. Maybe losing everything had taught her only how loss feels. Either way, that was no longer my burden." I stepped back. "Leave." She bowed her head and walked away. This time, she did not call me Uni.
Good.
That word belonged to someone else. Someone younger. Someone I never got to be. Chapter 13. My legal name changed 6 months later. Not into Choi Seoyeon.
Reccaped.
That surprised everyone. The trustees suggested I take my mother's surname. Reporters expected it. Myangi's lawyers feared it. Even attorney Seo asked gently, "Are you certain?" I was. Han was the name the world gave me when it failed to find me. It was the name on my school certificates, my orphanage records, my first job badge, my winter donation forms. It had carried me through hunger, loneliness, humiliation, death, and return. I would not throw it away, because blood finally remembered me. So I became legally Han Seoyeon, biological descendant and registered heir of Choi Yuan. Long imperfect.
Meaning.
The first time I entered the Hanul Foundation boardroom as recognized heir, nobody clapped.
Good.
I was tired of rooms that clapped too early. The trustees looked nervous. Some had supported Erin. Some had suspected and stayed quiet. Some had treated me like furniture until the DNA test turned me into power. I sat at the head of the table, where my grandfather once sat. Attorney Seo stood beside me. The first agenda item was not inheritance distribution. It was orphanage oversight. Everyone looked surprised. I smiled faintly. Hanul Foundation spent 20 years funding orphanages while failing to identify the founder's own granddaughter inside one. Before we discuss legacy, we will discuss systems. No one argued.
Power is useful that way.
But I was careful. Power could become Myangi's greed. Erin's costume. My grandfather's blind hope. I did not want to inherit only money. I wanted to repair the machine that had swallowed me. Chapter 14. 1 year after the ceremony, I visited my grandfather's grave. Not with reporters. Not with trustees. Alone. The cemetery sat on a hill, overlooking the river. Pine trees moved softly in the wind. My mother and father were buried nearby, their names finally restored beside mine in the family records. I placed white plum blossoms on my mother's grave, then stood before my grandfather's. For a long time I said nothing. Anger and grief stood inside me like two sisters who refused to leave the same room. "You looked for me," I said finally. The wind moved through the trees, but not well enough. No answer. "You suspected Aaron." Silence. But too late. Still silence. I closed my eyes. "I loved you before I knew you were mine." Every winter, when the foundation sent blankets, I thought some kind stranger cared if I was cold. My voice broke. "I let it. That was you. And it wasn't enough." Both things are true. A bird called somewhere beyond the trees. I wiped my face. I'm going to make sure the foundation learns to look properly. It was not forgiveness. Not exactly. But it was something I could carry. As I left, my phone buzzed. A message from Attorney CO. "Board documents ready for review." Also, reporters are asking for a statement on Aaron's civil settlement. I typed back, "No comment." "Proceed with recovery of assets, but leave her basic living trust untouched." He replied, "That is generous." I stared at the word. Generous? Maybe. Maybe not. I did not want Aaron destroyed beyond survival. I wanted my life back. There was a difference. Chapter 15 months later, I saw Aaron one last time.
Not at the estate.
Not in court. At a small community center funded by Hanul Foundation. She was volunteering under her birth name.
No cameras. No pearls. No choi sernam.
She was stacking chairs after a children's reading event when she noticed me. For a moment, she froze. Then bowed.
Not deeply.
Not theatrically. Just enough. "Miss Han," she said. Not Uni. Not Air.
Miss Hen.
It felt correct. I nodded. "Aaron." She looked thinner, but steadier. "I heard the foundation is changing the orphanage registry system." "Yes." "That's good." "Yes." A silence passed. Children laughed in the next room. The sound softened something sharp inside me. Aaron held a stack of picture books against her chest. "I won't ask you to forgive me."
Good.
She gave a small, sad smile. "I'm learning." "What?" "That wanting a family doesn't make one yours." The words were simple.
Late.
Almost enough. I looked at her. "I'm learning that getting one back doesn't erase being abandoned." Her eyes filled. Not for herself this time. Maybe for both of us. Maybe that was wishful thinking. "Then I hope you heal," she said. I studied her. The fake daughter. The thief. The girl who had once been used by adults and then chose to keep using me. "I hope you become someone who would have told the truth sooner," I said. She bowed her head. "I hope so too." I left before the conversation could become something softer than it deserved. Outside, evening light fell over the street.
No snow.
No black car. No frozen road. Just children leaving with books, parents calling their names, buses sighing at the curb. Life continuing. Not beautifully. Not perfectly.
But mine.
Chapter 16. That night, I returned to the family estate. My estate now, though I still prefer to call it the old house. In the hallway, my mother's portrait had been moved to the center wall. Not hidden in the archive. Not used behind Aaron in staged interviews.
Scene.
I stood before it for a long time. Choi Yuan smiled from the frame, young and bright and forever older than me only in memory. I touched the plum blossom pendant at my throat. "Mother," I whispered, testing the word. It still felt unfamiliar. Sacred. Painful. I came back. The house was quiet. For once, quiet did not feel like exclusion. It felt like space. My name was Han Seoyeon. Lost granddaughter. Registered heir. Daughter of Choi Yuan and Han Jiso. The girl who let the fake daughter take the inheritance certificate, the stage, the applause, and the family name she had worn like silk. Then I watched the DNA test do what shouting never could. It did not scream. It did not cry. It did not beg the room to believe. It simply opened. And in the silence after the truth appeared, everything stolen began finding its way home.